Welcome to the Leadership Exposé podcast. This podcast is for purpose-driven leaders at diverse levels and organizations around the world who are seeking to scale and transform their leadership, to level up their business, and to create an impact on the lives of people all around them. Business and boardroom topics, trends, innovation, transformation, and the intersection with leadership is the focus. We enable success. I'm your host, Stephen Paul. In this episode, we meet Sophia Ukor, the founder and CEO of Violet Simon, a media company that amplifies the voices of women from diverse backgrounds using authentic storytelling to explore women's lives, experiences, challenges, accomplishments, and milestones towards leadership and success. The firm strives to push representation and equality, inspire others, and generate calls to action on key women's issues in all aspects of life. Sophia was also the delegate for the UN Women UK Commission on the Status of Women 2022. We will learn more about Sophia and the work she is doing. Sophia, welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm fine. Just trying to get the ball rolling, isn't it?
Absolutely. And, for our viewers and listeners, we are in the month of December, approaching Christmas and the holiday season. So it's definitely a very busy period for everyone as they ramp down towards the end of the year, as I'm sure it is for you.
Yeah. Time for festivities, meeting up, and just unwinding from the crazy, chaotic year.
We'll hear more about that one, Sophia. But for our audience purposes, tell us where you're based. You know that we know we're both in the UK, but I'm just keen to hear from you.
Yes, I'm based in London, UK.
Wonderful, excellent. It's lovely, very vibrant place and lots of things happening as we both know.
Yeah, especially it's very nice. I always love London during the Christmas and New Year's season. It's always nice.
Excellent. Keen to hear about your your journey, Sophia. I mean, you've got I know we've spoken about this previously, but really keen to just hear from you through some highlights as to your personal and that intersection with that professional leadership journey and how you came about into Violet Simon.
Yes. So my journey is I started I've started writing since I was 9, and I think that when people ask me about my journey, I always say that a person's journey or what they do, for me, it's always kind of interwoven with my own personal experiences, and I know that I have always been quite passionate about amplifying the voices of women, or just amplifying, listening to people, and advocating for people, and when I growing up in an African background, I grew up in Nigeria, so that's where I'm from, and I started writing when I was 9 years old, and I just always loved to tell stories. Writing for me was an escape from all the chaos that I was dealing with at the time, and then I wanted to, go to fashion school, but
I'm smiling with you, Sophia.
Yes, I wanted to go to fashion school. I was, my grandmother was a tailor as well, among many other things. And I just thought, I've always loved fashion. Anyone who knows me, who's seen me go out, knows that, well, I do like to dress up. And so so it's never really left me, but from my parents and from their point of view, it was that I had to have something concrete, and fashion is something that I could pursue, on the side, but I should have something tangible. So when, for example, someone says, like my brother who loved to draw, and it's like, okay, let him go to art school, and it's like, well, no, maybe he can do something else that can, like, maybe architecture, things like that. So that's how it was. And so I was initially, I had this uncle who was very good at math, who was an accountant. And so he always told me that he used to call me, he calls me Victoria. That's the name he gave me. And then he'd be like, Victoria, make sure you're an accountant because you're going to make a lot of money. You will be rich. And so I decided that I wanted to be an accountant, and I was failing math so bad. And then I told my parents, and my parents said, you know what, you need to, you cannot always be, saying you want to do this, you want to do that. So I stayed there, and even though I was failing, until my teachers came to my rescue and said, this girl is very good with literature. She's very good with, government. She's acing it. I was like an A student at government and, on all the civic studies. And then at the time, it was only the main courses that, you were supposed to aspire to was law, and law, science, accountancy, and all that. So I picked law as an art student, and that's what I went into. And then, from my own personal background, it never really the whole idea of inequality and the expectations of women was just something that never chimed with me. But of course, when you grew up in that environment where you see certain things where women are expected to be submissive or expected to take permission from men, or women are blamed for being harassed and abused, it then becomes something that you kind of internalize and normalize, and that also breeds a lot of stuff. And I know that when I wanted to look to the media, I mean, you go on the media and you look at the media and you can count how many women are actually in front of the screen. You can count the women's issues, the things that affect women, what companies are covering the stories, what stories of these women are being told. That there was a lack in that aspect. And I know from a young age, even though I didn't vocally voice it to my friends or the people around me at the time, I knew that there was this burning ache to always be a voice for people, and also be just that person who always amplifies voices. And even with fashion, so yes, while I was studying, I have several degrees. So I did study English language and literature. And while I was studying English language and literature, I set up my own fashion company, and I was doing that while I was in school, and also working as an intern in a media company, a digital media company at the time. And so all that kind of gave me a little bit of experience. And I did that. And so within the space of, I think, 8 years, while I was studying English language literature, and then I went on to study law, I ran 3 companies. I ran a fashion company, an interior design company, and a public relations company, a PR company. I co-founded that with friends at the time. And I think I always say that the journey to who I am, and even founding Violet Simon, starts with my own personal awakening. Because I think about 8 years ago, I moved to UK. And in that time, it was kind of like I came to do a master's degree, and it was me also starting over again. Like, I'm not starting over again per se, like, oh, I'm leaving and I'm going, but just having like a fresh reset. I put my business, I kind of like closed up my businesses in Nigeria, came to UK to do a master's, and in that moment trying to figure out what exactly it is that my purpose is, basically, and just wanting to understand what I'm doing and where to go from here. And at that time I was like, well, I'm going to maybe practice law. So I'm also a qualified international arbitrator. And but I was not happy because law wasn't something that I wanted. I didn't want to practice law. I wanted to do these other things that I'm doing, which is, talk to people, tell stories, and see how that works. And even when I started Violet Simon as a fashion blog, I noticed that every time I was writing a post about a dress, I was always telling a story about that dress, about my experience when I was wearing the dress. And, at the end of the day, storytelling was always wrapped in everything that I did. As a young girl, I would always maybe do movies. Well, I would direct movies with my siblings. Of course, I would tell them, okay, let's do card action. We do some drama, and I would sit down sometimes when my sister is being nice. She would sit down with me, and then I would be the one interviewing her and talking with her in gibberish. And so I think that when I decided to start taking a step back to really find what really ticks, what has always been the constant for me, in everything, I see that storytelling and has always been number one, and that has been that drive. But now, not just storytelling, but my passion for women, because I have seen how marginalized women are, growing up from that background, growing up in seeing how women's issues are. A woman is being domestically abused, but yet it's always the fact that she is the one at fault. Oh, maybe she shouldn't have yelled at the man, and that's why the man slapped her. Like, really?
Yeah.
And so and and even in today's world, the more I began to do my research, I realized that even in today's world, we see that only 0.5% of recorded history is about women's stories. We see that women make up literally 24% or less than 24% of the story, the news, the media, and television, worldwide. Only about We have very, very a few number of female creators in I can't remember the exact percentage in the entire, in the world, basically. And so in order for us to really implement change, in order for us to really, for women to be seen as, for there to be more equitable representation of women, it starts with storytelling. And it's not just storytelling about saying, okay, for props and wanting to, tick a box, but there has to be equitable representation. You need to ask yourself, it's because it's not just about race, it's also about class. Growing up in it's about class, is about, it's about abilities. You have disabled people, you have people from other communities like the LGBTQIA community, you have so many women from several backgrounds, and it's so important that their stories are infused into what we hear, what we see, and how we interact, because that would help us in even policy making, or how we interact with each other, and what we are able to, the conversations we have, and just in being better human beings, really. And that's kind of been the journey for me. And yeah, it's been bittersweet, to be honest, but we're here.
Yeah. I was listening with interest, and I was counting the different domains here. So fashion, media, law, public relations. You're a true entrepreneur and a business leader, but you bring that added side of storytelling, and especially from a woman's perspective as well.
Yeah.
And it's quite an interesting turn of a business leader that you have created here. So I'm keen to just build on that. And you are the founder and owner of Violet Simon, and
Yeah.
you talked about some of the women's issues here, and you talked about equality and so forth. Just keen to explore how you've built that through, and what are the biggest challenges that you are still experiencing, because you've created this medium, and you're a voice in your own right, and for the women as well, and for the audience groups. Tell us a little bit more about Violet Simon, and some of the current challenges that you still are experiencing.
I think that one of the most understated challenges people don't talk about enough, and I think it needs to be talked about, is the challenges of a migrant person, especially when in the context of business, a migrant entrepreneur. Now, I didn't grow up in UK. I did my master's in UK, but I didn't school per se in UK. Master's is probably just a year. So, and the system is different. The people, especially in UK is very different. It's difficult. The culture of UK makes it very difficult for people to integrate, because there's this very uptight, conservative way of, going about things, and, very isolating. So there is a challenge there. And when it comes to business and trying to run a company and a business, you need network. You need people who can go out of their way to support you. And that's something that I've seen that is very lacking in UK. And that has been one of the struggles that I've had. I've worked hard to, create a network. And and it's been very hard, and it's been hard, especially because well, in 2018 I got pregnant, right? And my pregnancy was very tumultuous. It was horrible. And I was sick, literally. I was pretty much practically in the hospital almost throughout the pregnancy. And that affected my health even postpartum. So for 3 years, I struggled with my health. My health was just not, I was always going for tests and scans to rule out one thing or the other. And I wasn't back on my feet till this year, basically, late last year.
Yeah.
And then that's when I relaunched Violet Simon. So within that space, so everything I tried to build that community and work up until 2018. And then everything just went. And one of the shocking things that I realized was how isolating it was, because no one cared about what was going on, even though I said this is something that was happening to me at that period. So it just became me, myself, of course, my husband, who's been great, and my siblings and my parents, doing for me at that time. And now that I've come back and I'm relaunching Violet Time, and I have also launched a magazine book series, it's still that struggle of, trying to make your mark, and also the lip service as well, because a lot of people, it's very easy for people to make promises or say you're doing something great to your face, and oh, we want to, do stuff with you, and then later on it becomes a situation where no one is quite keen or interested in doing that. And I have actually been forced to think, and I'm not one who likes to, bring out the race card or talk about, oh, maybe it's because I'm Black or anything, but sometimes I have had to force myself to think and reassess the situation and think, would things have been a little bit different for me if maybe I was not Black? And I remember I did have a conversation with somebody when I was saying I need help with this, and they were like, well, it's going to be very difficult for people to help you because, one, you are as Black, you're Black, so it's so that's kind of one of the challenges. But for me, again, I didn't grow up in UK, I grew up in Nigeria, and come what may, my mentality is I don't care about what anybody's thinking about my skin color. I'm just going to forge ahead and keep doing it, because it's hard, but I will keep doing it. And I think the other challenge, again, just that I didn't grow up here, so I keep working hard to build that community, to build that network, to prove myself, so people can find me trustworthy. And of course, funding as well. And funding comes in different ways. It comes with collaborations with other companies and organizations. It comes through people actually making purchases. It comes through investors also investing in this. And funding is a huge problem, which we're still working to grow and and get, but it's been one of those challenges again. And there are times, like obviously in the morning, that there are days that I don't even feel like just going on, like just packing everything up and just saying, what, to hell with everything. But again, that's the thing with when you're very passionate about something, no matter how many times you want to quit, you just can't you can't quit. And that's kind of been I would say, those challenges with the networking, the opportunities, and funding.
And very very important aspects, Sophia. When we look at companies, I mean, most people work in companies, they're business leaders, they're entrepreneurs, there are women out there who are trying to make a difference as well. But when we look at this whole ecosystem of whether they're in companies or whether they are individuals, or what kind of conversations, let's say in the scenario of, let's say, companies, what kind of conversations do you think companies need to be having at leadership level, management level, board level? What do they need to prepare for? You mentioned about migrant workers. You're in the midst of doing a lot of good work around women's issues and so forth. But tell us a little bit more about what companies and management teams can actually take ownership of and execute to make a difference.
Well, I think it depends. Are we talking in terms of supporting entrepreneurs or supporting people in general? Because I think so I would have to ask you, like, in what context is it, in terms of like entrepreneurship, or in terms of just supporting leaders supporting their team?
So it's actually it's twofold. It is actually leaders supporting their workforce, number one, and number two, entrepreneurs who might be women as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the first thing that a leader is someone who is ready to listen. You cannot be a leader. What are you leading if you're not able to listen to the people who make up who you're leading, basically. And I think that's been one of the problems, because sometimes we have it in workforces, in I'll start with workforces, for example, and sometimes some of the leaders probably cannot relate to some of the experiences that people have. It's just when we're talking about women's health, for example, menopause, endometriosis, issues that affect women, sexual harassment, all that. And there is a there was a research the other time about 80% of women in the workplace who have faced sexual harassment, but they don't talk about it. They just don't say anything. So I think the conversation is, first of all, as a leader, are you creating a safe space for your team? Because it's so important to create a safe space where people are able to talk about the things that need to be talked about and addressed. And that shows, and it's not about beating people up when they're actually trying to express themselves, to say this is something that needs to be addressed. And then also having conversations with people who are dealing with this thing. So you want to make a work space more inclusive and understand how you can better support maybe your female workers. Are you listening to your female workers? Are you actually asking them questions about how they think, what they think, and policies that need to be put in place to better make them, to make your workspace a better place to support them? And I think it's very, very important to have those conversations, and then not just listening, but seeing how you can implement them. And even in implementing these decisions, leaders should also involve the people who would be directly impacted with these decisions. So you want to implement things that support women, right? Yeah. You need to involve women who are actually dealing with it, not just, oh, she's a woman and then I'm going to involve her. You need to have an inclusive and equitable thing. Or this is women from different backgrounds, or this is a woman who's a mother, for example, or this is a woman who has an illness, for example, or who has a health issue or a mental health issue, or or is going through menopause. You go through, or disabled woman, or a woman from a different community or other communities. Involve them in those decisions. Because if you're not involving them, if you're just listening and then you want to go ahead and make a decision or a policy or creating a workspace, but they're not also involved in that decision making, then it's going to be futile, because you're going to be creating a decision. You think you're helping everybody, but then there may be things that they would think to say, okay, maybe let's do it this way instead. From my own, from my own point of view, from our point of view, we know that this would make it work better. That is how you can be, I think, an effective leader, leading by example, and also encouraging other leaders within those communities to also be more engaging and not dismissive of people. When you see something that's not right, you call it out. You don't sweep it under the carpet. I think even in terms of even entrepreneurs and supporting women, it goes down. It's all down to the same thing. Nowadays, you have people talking a lot more about things that need to be done, more inclusive entrepreneurship, how funding needs to, there needs to be more funding for women and all that. But there's other factors to that. What are some of the things that would make women not be able to access funds? And even when they access funds, what are the other supports that they would need? We're talking about women from different backgrounds, for example. If you're given a woman who just moved into UK with no network, 100K, how is she going to be able to utilize that 100K without support, without a network? So those are things that people, and you cannot know these things if you're not having the conversation with directly with the people with the lived experiences. And I think it's just so important. It starts, and that's why it starts. So you don't necessarily have to, because we do have leaders, and I think it's also important to also in leadership include people who also understand how these things work. Because I feel like leadership is twofold. You don't necessarily have to have have direct lived experience in order to empathize with people and be an effective leader in the decisions that you make for your team.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And then another thing also is, when you're a leader as well, and then you look around you and you see that everyone around you are people from just exactly the same background as you are, then maybe it's time to make a change, a shuffle, and include people who don't have the same background as you are as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
no, absolutely.
yeah, I think that's so important when we're talking about leadership, especially and it's just all encompassing in everything we think about, whether it's in the workforce or whether it's in entrepreneurship.
Yeah, wonderful. Sophia, we're coming to a close very shortly. We're keen to hear, your closing messages, but also as part of that, tell us your, we're approaching the end of the year. 2023 is coming about very, very, very soon. What are your milestones from a Violet Simon perspective and from your perspective as well?
I would say a milestone is actually like relaunching Violet Simon, and then launching our magazine book series Disruptors. Doing what we've done. With tomorrow we're gonna make it 3 events we've done this year. We've been featured in several publications. I've appeared on BBC TV, radio. Our audience reach has spanned, across all our platforms to thousands, like about 40 to 50,000. I've met incredible women as well, incredible people. I've made good connections, and I'm very positive and optimistic about next year. So I think just being able to do what I'm doing, in spite of what has, all the challenges, and being in good health, I think which is something that I've struggled with for the past few years, is a huge milestone for me, and I'm just so grateful.
Wonderful. Sophia, thank you so much for your time and for sharing with us your journey, your insights. We appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Stephen.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much, folks, for listening in, and stay tuned for our next episode on entrepreneurship, and we'll talk a little bit more about that one. Stay tuned.
All right.
Hey, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You're now seeing this part of the video also because you consume some of my content, insights, and teachings. Maybe you've been to my LinkedIn page or website, or seen other social media ads, or listened to my podcast. I'm Stephen Paul, a business and transformational executive coach, strategic advisor, leader, and board member. I've been in diverse roles: corporate executive, entrepreneur, and worked with businesses and firms of all sizes, built and launched businesses, created high-impact boards, and so forth in 4 continents. I get it. I've been there, done that, but what is different is I bring a unique perspective and a playbook. I've helped 100+ business leaders just like you to scale and align their leadership, top teams, the board, and overall business for growth. Leaders like Ivana from medium-sized company in the EU who grew 150% and expanded globally in under 5 months. After she started to work with me over facilitated sessions in an initial 3 days, I helped fine-tune their strategy and align their leadership team and board to be a cohesive driving force to achieve their dreams and outcomes. I want to teach you the same thing, and more on how to scale and align your leadership team and board so you can increase your business growth and value. Get clarity on what is the next right strategy for you. There are multiple ways we can work with you. Number 1, click the link for a free, non-obligatory 60-minute initial strategic session. Let's get a feel for your dreams, your vision, your challenges, and let me convert that into a route map for you where we can co-develop and co-pilot. Number 2, enroll in an innovative and intuitive digital online course that I have created to help you transform. It's called Unshakable Resilience. It is the ultimate program for individuals and business leaders like you who want to be equipped at a personal and professional level to respond to any form of challenges. or in crisis situations and take on opportunities with grit, resilience, and build a mindset of success. In essence, you want to be unshakable, thrive in crisis, take on opportunities in the face of adversity, and build a success mindset. So, click the link below to learn more on how I can personally help you individually and your firm to scale and align your leadership team and business and pivot in a transformational way. And for you to experience this, whatever the challenge you're facing, get in touch with me. Let's discuss, and I will share my insight rapidly to enable your transformation. Click the links below.